All right, we're rolling now.
Are you going to host today?
Am I hosting?
I'm talking to you.
Cool. Well, welcome to the pod. We're here with Rod Staton, who is Dan Staton's dad, and me, my grandfather. So it's three generations sitting all right here. We're all elk hunters. We all hunt archery elk, and so we probably have some different aspects and views on this whole hunting journey that we all been on together, and I've probably seen a pretty cool variance in the times that we've been doing it. So,
Are you really 19?
yes.
He's like the oldest 19-year-old I've ever met.
He's always been an old man.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He's the best guy to elk hunt with.
He's more mature than you.
Oh, way more. Way more. And he very quiet until he gets super, super excited. Then he'll lay it on you pretty fast.
I don't think I've experienced that.
It's going to happen. Now, when you go hunting in southern Idaho, you got to get to about the 180-mile marker out of Spokane. Total silence. Not a word. Just listening to the radio. Then all of a sudden, he'll put his Mountain Dew down, and then he'll say, guess what? And then he just goes. And he'll go for an hour nonstop. And then you'll go, is he ever going to stop?
Mm-hmm.
And then he stops. And then it's 2 to 3 hours of silence. Yeah, that's the way it is. Am I right?
Yeah, sounds about right.
Sounds about right.
Okay. Well, if you're podcast hosting, did you have a direction you wanted to go? Like, the first thing I could probably bring up would be Uncle Dink.
Dinkus, Uncle Dink. Yes. That's a great place to start.
Thanks to him. Here we are.
All thanks to him.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I'll try to make this a condensed version. I was living in the suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia, and I had an uncle that lived 50 miles north in a little town called Gainesville, and he had 3 sons, and of course, Christmases, Thanksgiving, whatever, we would inevitably get together with that family and hang out. And then I would go over there for sleepovers. So going from life in the suburbs where I was on a bowling team, a Little League baseball team, and Little League basketball and football, to go hang out with my Uncle Dink and his boys was like a culture shock because they all were sportsmen. So this is kind of a cool point, and I noticed this as I watch the different generations of hunters. This was in the 60s, and in the 60s, if you hunted, you did much more. You hunted, you fished, you vacationed in the mountains, you camped where you could go deep sea fishing or fishing on a river. So you were an all-around sportsman. So I got exposed to everything with that family. I got exposed to camping along by a little river up in the middle of the North Georgia mountains, and you'd get up at 5 o'clock, and my aunt would get up at 4 and have biscuits and gravy and eggs and bacon ready for you and a paper sack with a sandwich, and then you were out on the river trying to catch trout. So if you weren't doing that, you were going on four-wheeler rides up in the mountains. And I mean, by four-wheeler, I mean a Jeep. 5 of us would pile into a Jeep, and my uncle would take us on these really gnarly roads. And it was all about nature watching, looking for deer crossings across the road, everything. And I got introduced to so many aspects of the outdoor life. Probably the most fun one that I ever did was my uncle had 6 beagles, little small dogs that he kept at home, and we would go rabbit hunting. So that was ultimate fun. I mean, if you could take Tristan to do that. So down there they have these big thickets called briar patches, and they're literally like blackberries and raspberries, and they're all tangled. And these rabbits make little trails through them, and they use the beagles to go in there and flush them out. And then you kind of surround the thicket, and then they pop out one end, and you just start blasting. And so we would do that quite often. Squirrel hunted all the time after deer season. So as soon as deer season was over, you would transition into squirrel hunting. And the only guy I've seen in the industry that really gets squirrel hunting is Steven Ranella. If you ever watch him, you can just see he's totally into it, because it's all about your eyes, and it's all about spotting these little squirrels that are experts at just moving in the right direction to hide from you. So I learned how to skin rabbits. My uncle was a dictator. He shoots everything. We shoot everything. You get home, you and the other cousins go out and clean all the animals. You clean them, skin them, gut them, skin them, clean them, put them in a plastic bag, put them in the freezer. And so I got exposed to a lot. And did that with them. Got my first deer hunting with my cousin Lamar, which he posted a picture of him and his son catching bass today in Georgia. It's right there on Facebook. And got exposed to a lot with those guys. And then I would go back to the city life, and it was boring. And there was nowhere to fish or hunt in the suburbs. So fast forward, to later in life, my family relocated to North Idaho, and I left those guys, and I didn't really get to hunt with them but a couple times after that. But that's how I got my start in it, and it was from my uncle. He was a really, really cool dude. He was very, very quiet, and he was a guy that wanted to teach his boys everything. Later on, I figured it out, so he could sit in his easy chair and watch the Atlanta Braves, and we would hook up the camper. We would stock the camper. We would hook up the fishing boat. We would gather up the dogs. We would do whatever had to be done. And then he'd come out, get in, drive us to the spot, and we'd hunt. And then we'd get home, and he'd say, "Clean them damn fish." And he'd go in and watch the Braves. And then we would clean all these fish. So he was just a really cool dude, and he took a lot of time with me. I mean, he didn't owe me anything, but he, anytime I would pull into town, I would just call him or my aunt and say, "Hey, can you come get me?" And off I'd go, and I'd be lost in an adventure with them. So it was really fun.
So your dad passed away when you were 12. Did you think, have you ever thought, like, if your dad would have ever taken you hunting, or do you have any memories of your dad being in the outdoors at all?
No, he would fish.
Okay.
But he just had no desire to kill an animal. I think because of the way they were raised, they butchered their own chickens, they butchered their own hogs, it was in that transition area time in America where people were transitioning from a rural lifestyle to and this is kind of cool for you to hear, Riley, but transitioning from having all that stuff in your backyard to going to a supermarket and buying a frozen chicken or buying something. And I think he was more along the lines of, nah, I can go buy a chicken. I don't need to go out there. He always took me to my uncle's house. Always. He would always take me and drop me off. But he showed little interest in hunting.
That's interesting. Well, because of Uncle Dink, you got a big taste for the outdoors, and then you moved to North Idaho, Coeur d'Alene High School, where it's significantly different than Atlanta, Georgia.
Yes.
I mean, it makes me laugh because football is different in the South.
Yes, it's a religion.
Football's a religion.
It is.
So when you came, and you were, one thing that people should know about you and me is I think you're my biological father.
Yes.
But I'm not convinced. There's parts of you that are so different than me. One is just physically, I never was big enough to be a linebacker. Between the ears, my mentality in life is definitely that of a linebacker. I am aggressive and I like collisions, but I was always a strong safety.
Mm-hmm.
You were a freaking grown-ass man by the time you were in 7th grade with a beard.
Yes.
I still can't grow a beard.
Full mustache at 13.
I can't even grow a beard, and I'm 43. But moving to Coeur d'Alene High School and being exposed to football in the South, you moved your senior year or junior?
Junior.
So you probably showed up big swinging dick because you knew how to play football.
Well, I'll never forget the first practice I went to. So we played a game in Atlanta. At game time, it was 92 degrees on a Friday night, and we wore
100% humidity.
100% humidity, and we wore fishnet football jerseys. I don't know if you've ever seen those.
Oh, yeah.
But you can see right through them. You just have a number on the outside. Just a complete and utter sweat machine. And then we pull in 5 days later. We drove to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and of course, I walked into the high school, and the first words out of the principal's mouth was, "Well, do you play football?" And, yeah, I play football. So he was like, "Okay, practice is down at the junior high at 3:30. I'll see you down there." So I went down there, and everybody had these long cotton jerseys on with really long sleeves and really thick material. And they just put me out in the field, and we played. Let's see, what was the game? You would be circled by 10 guys, and you would be in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And they would yell, "Go," and then one guy would come in and try to knock you on your ass anywhere from the circle.
Mm-hmm.
So down south, when you hit somebody, you would growl, and just this guttural scream every time you hit somebody. It's just tradition. It was total aggression. So they'd never seen that up here. They did not know what to do with that.
So you laid the wood?
Oh, yeah, man. I was dropping those dudes like flies, screaming and dancing around. And I think it shocked them. But I will say this, in the end, Southern football players weren't really better than Northern football players. It was just a different brand of football down there.
Oh, yeah. I think brand is the right word.
I couldn't believe the size of the guys up here.
Some big boys.
At Coeur d'Alene High School, when I pulled in there, the right tackle, Steve Parker, he was probably 6'4", maybe weighed 200, 205. He went to the University of Idaho, and then he played with the Saints for 13 years.
Mm-hmm.
Our quarterback was 6'5", and got a full ride to Boise State, played there for 4 years, and then was a backup in the NFL. There was just some big old boys.
Some good talent.
And I never really played any teams up here that came close to a Southern style of football until we played Kellogg, that your father-in-law played on that team.
Yeah, how funny is that? So
Terry
my
Turnbull.
father-in-law, same year as him, I believe, right?
Yep.
56 is his birth year. Okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So my father-in-law was playing against my dad in high school. Rival schools, Kellogg, Coeur d'Alene, they don't like each other.
Yeah. A bunch of hick miners up there, and we went up there, and it was really an eye opener because they played a Southern brand of football. That's the first time.
Terry was good too. Like he went to University of Idaho. Like he played college ball. Both of you aren't big dudes, but I think it was just a different era.
Different era.
Yeah.
Totally a different era.
Nowadays, you both would be competing for a cornerback position.
Yeah. That was actually, I really remember my senior year in high school, they announced the very first offensive line at the University of Nebraska that averaged 300 pounds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, when I was growing up, an NFL lineman weighed 250 to 275 pounds.
Yeah.
And then the steroids came in and hit the Midwest first, University of Nebraska, the intensive weight training programs, you know, just super feeding these boys and hopping them up on a little bit of juice, and they got really, really big. But no, it was different. You know, an average sized guy could play college football, but you had to have speed, and I didn't have speed, so I was not fast. So I ran a 5 flat 40. So
that's actually not bad because I've done laser 40s when I was training athletes, and I think most people think they can run a sub 5 second laser 40. Most people cannot.
yeah,
Seriously, that's decent speed. The Uncle Dink in my life was you. You exposed me to the outdoors. And I don't know, I've talked about it behind your back on this pod, but I've given you credit for doing a really good job. I don't know intentionally, unintentionally, but I remember following you around like at Reflection Lake in the Mormon property,
yeah,
grouse hunting, and just being ate up with that.
Yep.
Ate up with that. I remember all our family camping trips, having a BB gun. It was great. I always was excited when you would come home from deer hunting to see if you got one.
right,
And you got one a lot.
yeah,
So it was always like, we as kids were excited when Dad pulled up in his old Chevy or whatever and see if there's anything in the back of the truck. And I don't know how I know I was the leading charge, but like I remember being like begging to go to hunter safety.
yes,
And I begging, and I think you agreed to it at age 10.
mm-hmm,
And Sarah, older sister, was in the same class as me, and then she's 2 years older, and my dad would like take her out and leave me at home, or at least try to, and I was like, no, and I would throw big fits and cry like a big baby, and I would get my way, and I'd get to go. And I think I kind of squeezed my sister out of hunting, honestly.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
pretty much.
Sarah could probably shoot a gun, and she was cool when hunting, but there was one place you took me one time. I don't think I had a gun in hand, but I had my hunter safety. It was up north somewhere. You sat me up against a tree, and this doe whitetail, for whatever reason, came down this trail, and she came within inches of us. And she didn't know we were there, and my leg started shaking.
Yeah, both of them did.
Never experienced. I'm like,
that.
like, what's going on with my body right now? Like, I was so amped about this interaction or encounter with that doe. And we got to stay in this camper that was on top of the back of your truck.
Yep,
And I'm sure we had like Denny in a can. Like, what's that?
Denny Moore.
Denny Moore in a can.
Yeah,
Like, we didn't,
baby.
I mean, and I thought we were eating like kings, and it was
Oh,
just
yeah.
me and my dad.
Yeah.
I don't think you killed anything on that trip, but like we came home and I was like, I love everything about this.
Yeah.
And then eventually, you borrowed a 30-30 from Dusty and put that in my hand, open sights.
Yep,
And I remember I hunted with it for a full fall, and I never got to shoot anything with it. And I think it was the last day, and you put an orange up against a tree at like 50 yards, and you're like, you got to empty out. Like, you at least got to shoot this gun. You know, you practice before the season, but like, see if you can hit that at 50 yards away. Hit it. And I don't know why, but like, I think that triggered you the next year for Christmas. I got a gun under the tree, a 308.
yep,
And I was like, oh shit, now I have arrived. I have a real rifle
Yeah.
did.
in my hand. And then I've told the story many times about that. I told it recently, in fact, when Troy Pottinger was over here, about how you took me to Diamond Lake at a deer camp with all your peers.
Yeah,
And there was like a foot of snow, maybe more.
It was a lot of snow.
And you set me up at a scrape alone and you went hunting. And then I kid you not, I didn't tell Troy this part, but like you parked the truck about 100 yards from the scrape. And
Yep.
I was sitting under a tree just watching the scrape. I got cold, which I still do to this day. So I knew how to start his truck up. I was 12, started his truck up, turned the heat on, got myself warm. And I look out of the truck and down the road is this buck and he's got his nose up this doe's ass, and they're like working their way towards the scrape. And so I turn the truck off, I get out, and they go into the timber. So I didn't see exactly where they went. And I walk down the road, and then eventually I stop and look, and he pops out 40 yards. And I just I probably didn't even I just saw fur and pulled the trigger.
Right.
I spined him. And so then I had to walk up and shoot him again. So that's 2 gunshots. And then you probably heard both those gunshots and knew that was me. And then you came running.
Yep.
And I was kind of like, I just killed a giant.
You killed a really nice buck.
It wasn't a giant, but it was definitely
It was
a really
nice,
cool palmated
nice
buck.
Really
And,
nice buck.
I do remember how proud you were, but I also remember getting that buck back to camp. And I don't remember what dudes were there, but I remember the attaboys, the slaps on the back,
Oh, yeah.
and then having it hanging in the garage and showing all the neighbors. And dude, I was kind of like the man. And I'm like, I don't know if you'd planned that, but holy crap, that hooked me on hunting. I'm like, there's nothing better.
Yeah.
But then junior high sports rolls around, and I don't hunt until, I don't know, the year I graduate high school. And I asked my dad, hey, I'm not playing college baseball. I'm quit. I'm here in town. Let's hunt. And then the rest is history. Picked right back up.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how you got started. That's how I got started.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get started, Coasty?
Well, I got lucky to have 2 of my own Uncle Dinks. I had you, Dan, who were obviously super into it, and ELKSHAPE was kind of in its infancy when I got started.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had Rod, of course. I was raised primarily on the west side of the state. My parents had moved there for some work, and because of that, I didn't get to grow up going to the cabin. It was always my dream. I was jealous of my cousins, always at the cabin, and I could vividly remember, whenever my grandfather would come around, I would nonstop harass for hunting stories and tell me another hunting story, just because for whatever reason, in that brief time when I was younger that I did get to go to the cabin and experience that, I was hooked. I just wanted to do that. And I think I had put into my head some semblance that the only way to be a man is to go kill something. And I remember when my parents told me we were moving back, my first question was, okay, can I start going to the cabin? That was the first thing I asked. And then we got back to Spokane and started going to our cabin again. And I think within a month of being back, I took my hunter safety with my grandfather. I was very convinced that I was an expert on all of those things. I learned every single question. I don't think I left those game wardens alone at the field day, answered every single question before someone else got the opportunity.
So, I got to tell you, I took him out to Spangle, like you're going south to Pullman.
Yeah, Spangle, Washington. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a little shooting range to the left and a clubhouse about 10 miles south of town. And we roll in there, and there's about 25 people in the class, all ages, some older gentlemen and some kids. And so we're sitting in rows, and the instructor's up front. And honestly, he wasn't a very astute instructor with his technique, because he would start out, and every time he would try to teach something, he would start asking a question like, well, what are some of the calibers you would use for white-tailed deer? Well, this guy, his hand would go right up first before anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And the instructor would call on him, and he would give the answers in a methodical fashion, A to Z, here's it is, boom, hand down. And he had the eye of the tiger going. He was sitting there, and he was like, okay, I'm ready for the next one. Okay, what is a centerfire rifle?
Mm-hmm.
So nobody else would raise their hand. So Riley, like every time, he's like this. Finally, the guy goes, Riley, let's let someone else answer a question.
And he's 9, right?
Yeah.
9
He's a
years old.
skinny little kid.
He still is skinny. I'm trying to change that. But yeah, you're right. You have a high IQ. It'll work for you. It'll work against you, and I'll help keep you on track. But 9 years old, you beat me to getting your hunter safety card. And let's give a little context to the cabin since you've mentioned it.
Yeah.
So there's a guy named Hassel Dawson. Is he retired yet?
He's retired this year. Yep.
And good.
That's where Riley hung his elk.
Yeah, exactly. Comes full circle. So Hassel Dawson is co-worker of Rod. Rod's working out of Vista. Hassel's a journey lineman. Just really good elk hunter.
Yeah.
And not an elk hunter that kept secrets, like an elk hunter that would be more than willing to help us out. And that was cool because we needed help. And this was back in my elk hunting learning curve days.
Yep.
I'd only killed a few elk with a bow and only killed one elk with a rifle, and it was about 2007. And of course, I didn't kill an elk in the fall. I never do. Right? Idaho was always kicking my ass, and I told my dad to ask Hassel, hey, like I'm going to go do the late archery in December. Where should I go? And he's like, well, Danny, you should go over here. So he tells me to go into the St. Joe. And I had only hunted like unit 7 and 9 and a little bit of unit 10, which is like pretty much going into Superior, Montana, and then cutting back in.
Right.
Yeah.
Pretty much never. And he's like, no. I want you to hunt, down in unit 6.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. And so I looked up the maps and I was like, oh, I got to go through a town called St. Mary's. I don't have to go all the way to Superior, Montana. So I drove through this town of St. Mary's and I went up the St. Joe River and I went to where Hassel told me and I could kill a cow or a spike or a bull. And sure enough, like he literally, wherever he dropped a pin, and there wasn't Onyx yet.
Right.
But he told me right where to go, and I got into elk right away. And I almost killed one with a bow that day, which was pretty cool. It was like a bluebird day. There was at least a foot of snow, and the snow was a little crunchy, which is why I couldn't close the deal.
Yeah.
And I remember like getting back in my truck, and there was still daylight. I only had time to hunt the first half of the day, and I had to be back for something. And I'm driving down the St. Joe River Road, and I see this cabin on the left-hand side with a Century 21 sign in it, and I pull over. And I think in 07 iPhone, I had an iPhone and maybe an iPhone 2 or something. And I took a photo of the cabin and I took a picture of the phone number and I came back. And I don't know if you and I were living together at that time. We might have been, we might not have been. We probably were. And I showed you it.
I think you had your house on 4th.
I might have. And I showed you the place and
Yep.
I was like, Dad, we should go together and buy this place. Look at it. It's awesome. It's right there. So we call the realtor and he's like, oh, sorry, guys. I should have put my sold sign up. This just sold. I'm sorry. And it was listed for something pretty cheap, like under $100K. And it was not a cabin. It was a house.
Yeah.
And it had 5 acres. And we just missed it. And I was like, I think my dad told Larry Vincent.
Yep.
And Larry's son.
Benson.
Larry's grandson or son works. He's a higher up for Victory Archery out of California.
Yeah.
So it's a small world, but he said, hey, if the sale goes through or doesn't go through, do you want me to let you know? And I was like, yes. Well, he never calls. The sale does go through. And then about 6 months later, it's back on the market and Larry calls us.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, this just went back on the market. I don't know what's going on, but these guys want to get out of it. And we were like, okay. So we went down to the bank, got a loan. The guy flipped it on us. So I think what did we end up paying for the cabin?
We wound up paying $185.
Yeah.
And we could have gotten it 6 months earlier for $160.
No, less than that, dude.
Was it less?
Yeah, the guy made 50, at least I thought it was closer to just over 100K maybe.
Yeah.
Anyways, the guy flipped it on us. We still bought it.
Right.
And then honestly, I'm like, okay, I'm 25 years old. I have 2 mortgages.
Yeah.
Not making great life decisions here. But we had that cabin for 15 years.
Yeah. And I'd like to provide a little context to that because I don't think a lot of your listeners really understand that you told the story of the first time we went elk hunting in Washington.
Yeah.
And with that same gun you shot that really nice buck with, you shot a 5x5. And first time we went out elk hunting. And so that kind of started a fire in him, in that he started talking to his uncle who lived in Idaho,
Right.
45 miles away or whatever. And Dan actually went hunting with a bow with his uncle.
Yeah.
And I had never owned a bow. I didn't know anything about it. And at the same time, I bought 10 acres way out in the country in some timberland, and I built a custom home out there.
Mm-hmm.
And Dan he got himself a bow, and then he started bow hunting right there out of the house. And I didn't start doing it. I was like, I'll still go out with my 30-06 and my 2 weeks of rifle, and I had my techniques for shooting young bucks and stuff. And he started having crazy encounters, like on our property, like right there. He had a moose come up. He was inside of a bush sitting there to ambush, and he had a moose come right up to him. He called me one day. I was at work, and he's like, "Dad, you got to come home." Why? There's bucks. It was right in the peak of the rut.
Right.
There's bucks running everywhere. I just shot at one. I missed it and stuck my arrow right in the tree. And
I missed a lot of bucks.
was missing bucks right and left.
Buck fever, man. Big time.
And I think maybe even you got a trail camera back then. I'm not sure.
I can't remember. I do know this.
Or you took pictures with your phone.
I might have, but I didn't. Probably not that early. That's pretty early in the game. But what I did do is I got hooked on elk hunting, archery elk hunting. So
yes,
the first 5 minutes of a rifle hunt in Washington, you called in a bull for me, not knowing what you're doing, and I shot a bull at 20 yards with a rifle.
Yeah, I was blowing cow calls.
And we had listened to a Primos cassette tape.
Right.
That came with the call that we bought on the way up the mountain in the dark. And he was learning how to make elk sounds.
Yeah.
Right then and there. And then those sounds were good enough. He called a bull in, and the bull came in quiet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I heard a stick break, and then there's a giant 5x5 walking towards my dad, who's set up 80 yards away. And I literally shot a 5x5 similar to when I was age 12. Threw the scope up, nothing but fur, pulled the trigger. Wow. And it happened so fast. And I remember you came down to me and you were like, "You shoot a buck?" I was like, "No, I just shot an elk." "A cow?" "No, a bull." "Did you hit it?" "I don't know." And we have pictures of when that bull died. I don't know why we didn't know this, but we thought you pulled the guts out and then you drug it down to the closest fire road. So Rod and I literally killed this 5x5. Gutted it. Biggest guts I've ever seen. I mean, you're talking, we've only gutted deer.
Right.
Now I'm up to my shoulder trying to get, the heart and lungs out of it. And we drug it downhill as far as we could. And then we went and got a 4-wheeler with a trailer attached to the 4-wheeler and like come-alongs and stuff. And we chained that thing onto, we brought it out whole. It never occurred to us to quarter it up.
No. I had no clue.
Idiots. And so when I go with my uncle, he takes me up to out of Superior in Idaho. He parks at the top of this ridge. It's just getting daylight. Uncle Kurt, he gets out of his truck. He lets out a bugle, and it's in this opening that I can see miles and miles. Picture your North Idaho choked full of brush drainage that goes down forever and ever. And way down at the bottom where there's no road, a bull answers him immediately. And he just looks at me and is like, "Grab your pack, we're going." And then we proceed, and I'm like, "Oh, we'll get down there in 20 minutes. No.
Yeah.
2-3 hours later, and minus binoculars I lost, and whatever else I lost a couple arrows just from the brush. We get down there, and we start calling this bull in, and looking back, that bull was very callable. We just didn't know what we were doing.
Right.
And Uncle Kurt he wasn't like a self-proclaimed elk hunting expert, but he just been out enough, and he took me out and he showed me just enough suffering, just enough bugle juice to where like that one day with him changed my trajectory forever. And I do remember hunting that year a lot without him because he only had so much time off, and I had all the time I needed. So I hunted solo. I had to overcome unknown country. I didn't know how to navigate mountains. I stayed in a tent and I was scared of the dark. I was always thought bears were going to come and get me. I'd sleep with a gun next to me. I'd have to just learn all this on my own. But that 1 year hooked me. And so I just wouldn't shut up to my dad about how he needed to get a bow. He needed to get a bow. We got to elk hunt with a bow. Father's Day rolls around. I just go down to the archery store. I had a good job. I just bought my dad a bow. I'm like, okay, you have a bow. Now you have to go. And I think you started, I think you elk hunted a little bit, but you got most of your reps whitetail hunting that first year.
Yeah.
And I think you were the first one to get a deer with a bow.
Yeah, I shot a buck down out of a tree stand down at the end of the driveway.
Yep. And I was like, dude, you did it. Like he did what I was trying to do all last year.
I actually called him in from across the farmer's field.
With a Primos can. Called him all the way in, shot him. And so my dad was the man. Like he was the first one to bow kill something. And I was like, okay, this is awesome. And I mean, we're talking aluminum arrows, XX75s, and the whole, like you had a Martin Pantera.
Yep.
And that really started our archery journey together. And so we entered the elk hunting learning curve pretty much like we killed one bull between us together with the rifle. And then I had 1 year head start of you on elk hunting, so I knew where to go where there were elk.
Yep.
But that's about it.
Yeah.
Couldn't tell you how to kill them, Dad, but we're going to go try.
Well,
And we watched the wrong DVDs, cassettes, VHS tapes. We watched Primos tapes.
Yeah.
the worst.
We did not know that Will Primos was a marketing genius and had a marketing budget and paid good money to hunt the Colorado Hill Ranch. All these nice ranches in Montana, all like, of course you can call them in there. Like we didn't never, so like we would mimic what we saw on these tapes.
Sure.
Because like, that's what you do.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it didn't take us very long to figure out that shit ain't working.
Well, so the reason I brought that up was to tie back into the cabin. So what happened for about 3 or 4 years in a row there, I would take elk season off of work. You would arrange your schedule, and then we would head over to North Idaho. And we started in tents. We never bought a wall tent. We generally had, I think about the same time you read Cameron Haynes' book on backcountry bow hunting, and you started picking up.
I don't think his book was out yet. I was reading Chuck Adams.
Or Chuck
I
Adams
was
or
reading
something.
Life at Full Draw. I was reading Dwight Shue.
Yes.
Larry D. Jones.
And he was picking up like these little lightweight tents for backcountry bow hunting. He was picking up objects time, And so we bought some tents, and we would go over there, and we had a base camp in these tents, and then sometimes we would go back in and stay overnight, but most of the time we'd hike back to our tent or to the car or the Jeep or whatever. But we definitely had encounters, and you get bulls to bugle. And once that happened, it was pretty much over. Well, then we kind of graduated, and I was like, dude, I want to be more comfortable when we're doing this. So I bought a camper. Big old camper.
That was a game changer, man.
Yeah.
And I'd drive that thing up there, and we would have that as a home base.
Because we could finally dry out stuff.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know how North Idaho is now. Like I said, I'm 5 years removed of hunting the fall there. But when I used to hunt there, it's a rainforest.
It is.
And it's such thick, dense brush that when it rains, it stays wet for several days afterwards.
Yep.
And
Unless the wind blows.
Unless the wind blows. So you're constantly battling, drying out your gear. And when you're poor, you don't have great gear or ignorant. Like we used to hunt in cotton.
Yeah.
I used to buy my stuff from Walmart.
Yeah.
I didn't know about that kind of stuff. And so it was interesting to see our evolution of like, okay, this camper is going to allow us to dry out gear a lot faster.
Yep.
Which it's changed the game.
Yeah. Or we could have, another cool story. I took my camper up there one time and I drove on this wilderness road along Loop Creek. And we knew the general area we were going to hunt. And I pull into this meadow and there's a big wall tent there and these two old timers come out and they said, well, what are you going to do with that big camper? And I said, I'm just looking for a place to park it. And they're like, park it right here. You know, we'd love to have you. So I backed it in there and they said, hey, come on in and let me show you my wall tent. And I went in there and these guys were in their late 60s, early 70s. And there was cots in there and there was 50-pound bags of potatoes, 50-pound bags of onions.
Do you remember their last name? I do.
I do too.
Well, one of the sons listens to this pod or something. He reached out one time and said but it's McCracken.
The McCracken boys.
And they had a sweet elk camp and they were pretty hospitable for us two very inexperienced rookie elk hunters.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
That's
there
awesome.
was about 15 bags of bottles of Jack Daniels in the corner and all these mixers, everything you could ever want.
And they were up there for the whole month.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It was elk camp.
Are you guys elk hunting? Oh, yeah. We'll get one. We got our ways. We'll get one. And Dan and I would go out at, 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, drive up the mountain. He'd drop me off or I'd drop him off or we'd go into some area. And so even just being in the camper gets old, after a while. And so we were just talking and we said, we should go into Avery and see if there's a place for sale or something we could buy. And then we could just come up here and hunt out of the cabin. Because a lot of the times we'd be on our dirt bikes and we would ride 8 miles, 9 miles into Avery, pay $5 to take a shower, pay to do our laundry,
Dry out clothes, laundry.
get a beer, get, a cheeseburger, whatever you could, anything but Denny Moore in the can. And so we looked at a house there, and then that started the search. We actually...
Oh, yeah, we did start in Avery as our first town.
Yep. We went all the way over to Superior, Montana. We went up to Priest Lake, Idaho. We just started looking for a little house we could buy. And then that other house that you had talked about earlier, that was off the market, then back on the market. That came on the market, and we picked that up. And then coincidentally, about the time we got that cabin, I think you were in probably your 5th year of elk hunting, and it started to come together.
Like the dots started connecting. Right.
Yeah.
And what those dots were is whatever day my dad would take off because he was worn out and I'd go solo, I'd get an elk killed.
Yep.
And it kind of we started figuring out eventually that I need to go basically kill 2 bulls first, get it done, hopefully before his birthday, which is September 22nd. And this is how it worked for like over a decade. I'd have 2 bulls on the ground. It'd be almost his birthday. And then the peak rut, he had himself a dedicated caller, which makes things a lot easier to have someone just focused on calling just for you.
Right.
And so, and calling for him made me better at hunting for myself because I would learn how to communicate, the right things to say, when to say them, and then I could watch the elk a lot and see kind of how they would come into these calls.
Sure.
Which I would take that knowledge and then apply it to myself as a solo guy who had to be both. And so, and then I would also learn a lot about watching him shoot these elk. I wouldn't always see the shot because it's so thick, and then having to have him tell me where he thought he hit the elk how to back out, how to back in, how to look, read the sign, grab the arrow. And we learned real quick, like some cool stuff. Like if I ever shoot an elk and I don't know, can't find it, like I would get my dad.
Yeah.
And I would stay out of the way. And then almost every time he shoot an elk, he was very emotionally charged up on it.
Oh,
So
totally.
I would be the guy out in front
Sure.
reading the sign. And we just kind of built these systems over time, like how to get a rack on your motorcycle to help carry out elk quarters, and how to set up a spike camp, and how to scout in
Yeah.
the summer and cut trail and hang cams. And eventually that cabin, we realized, okay, we're getting quite a few elk a year. We should butcher this meat ourselves. Let's build a storage cooler with a
Yeah.
cool bot, and we can hang the meat and age it. And so like that cabin just catapulted
Yeah.
our elk hunting abilities. So your age, how old were you when you guys moved back?
9.
So you got your hunter safety, and then you're a pretty persistent young man. You started hounding that guy over there to take you hunting.
Yep. Almost every single day. I mean, finally, I was told, okay, you can go hunting. You can use this 243. We can go bear hunting because we're coming up on the end of this bear season. And it was in June of 2015 or 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to shoot my first bear over bait. And that, I mean, I had already been pretty well hooked on it. But that moment of shooting a bear, and then, I mean, I'll tell the story on that briefly because it was pretty unique for an experience. I don't think, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if you had a ton of confidence that I'd actually shoot something that day.
Absolutely none.
No, you're 9 years old.
I was sound asleep when you
Yeah.
saw that bear.
I remember
I
very.
was sitting in a chair.
It was a cool bait setup. I do miss
It
that
was.
setup.
I do too.
It was on the ground, no tree stands,
Yeah.
and we had set it up for bow or rifle.
Yeah.
If you're going to use a rifle, it's about an 80-yard shot. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No.
I was less than that.
It was
I-
50.
50 yard,
Okay.
yeah.
I had set it up to where I set that bait. I picked it out, and I set it up to where it was kind of like ground and pound is what we had. And again, bear hunting, we learned a lot about bear hunting. We
Yeah.
evolved. And finally we figured out you can't kill bears with a tree stand over bait. They circle, they smell you. But if you set up a spot where you can be just far out of their wind circle, they'll come in, and then you can just get the wind right and tiptoe in, kind of a spot and stalk / it's ground and pound.
Right.
And so you guys had set that spot up.
Yeah.
And oh yeah, I remember this day because I actually, hours later after you kill that bear, we get it out. I take your photos, give you high fives. I went back to the same freaking spot that you guys were at, and I ended up choking on a brute of a red bear. Like you don't see cinnamon red bears very
No,
often.
not big ones.
Not big ones. And I choked, and I have it on video so I can picture what I did wrong. But anyways, that was the setup. It was 50
Yeah.
yards away, and the thermals just kick up. And this bait had been established for 2 months.
Yeah.
So bears, when they start hitting this bait that early, they make bear trails.
Yes.
And so all you got to do is study the bear trails that they've created through the brush, and then you kind of know how they approach.
Yeah.
So you kind of like reverse engineer. You guys knew you were safe to sit 50 yards uphill at an angle. My dad falls asleep.
Well, so I was sitting there, and I can't remember. I think I was playing with a little bug or something, messing around, and he fell asleep after we ate our peanut butter sandwiches.
Sounds about right.
And I remember looking up and to my left because I had good hearing, but I couldn't differentiate between, is that a bear or is that a bug or a cricket or whatever. And I remember looking up and left, and I saw when I looked back, for sure a bear. It was absolutely a bear looking right at where we were in that little brush field there, but it was doing its circle to smell. And then it went back up in the trees. And for whatever reason in my young head, I thought like that was a dog or a coyote. I didn't know what it was. I thought it was something that wasn't a bear. But I did tap. I woke Rod up and said, I think I heard a bear up there. And he said, okay. And went back to bed. And then I remember I was playing with the gun or something, and I looked up, and there's a bear eating out of the bait.
Yep.
And it's just right there. And I remember tapping you on the shoulder and saying, Papa, there's a bear. And you said, then shoot it. and I pulled the trigger, and I think that's when you really like
Yeah.
jumped up and woke up and kind of
I
realized
didn't know this.
That'll what had
wake you
just
up.
happened. And
So you didn't get to coach him through the shot, like, hey, Riley, pick this spot right here, squeeze, 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 squeeze.
Yeah, no, I was awake. I was looking right at the bear when he shot.
Oh, okay.
But I was still, kind of drowsy. Boom. And that thing dropped like a rock. I mean, it just dropped straight down and flipped forward and rolled down the hill.
Oh, of course.
I have zero recollection of the actual shot other than I can remember putting my head to the scope and then looking up, and I just remember seeing the bear was down and then going up to it. And I think I tried to leave the gun behind and go run, and I remember being stopped and saying, nope, no, you grab the gun and you work your way up. And then I think the cool moment for me was, of course, coming up on the kill and then being coached through, honoring the animal and praising God in that moment, which was pretty cool. And then it was just right there, barely down the hill, pull it right up in the road. And we put it on the four-wheeler, just put it right on top and drove down, and we actually ran into you on the way up. So we all got to convene for a moment there, and I got the pats on the back and good job. And, you're a hunter now, you're a man, you killed. And that was a big moment for me and meant a lot. And then you took pictures. And like I said, at that age, it's just really spotty little snippets that I have of memory. I remember you saying that you were an expert at making small things look big when you took that photo. And then, I remember I was there. I didn't actually do much.
That wasn't a little bear.
That was not a small bear.
No, it wasn't. But I remember while you guys were helping me skin it up and whatnot, just like I had never seen the inside of an animal. I'd never been a part of that process. Like, I think I didn't click to me that I had taken a life and actually gone through that process until it was, I can do whatever I want with this creature that's in front of me and is at my mercy completely right now. And that was, I think, the sobering moment of it. It wasn't just the...
Yeah, there should be a component of remorse.
Yeah.
There is.
Or you're a sociopath. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, the animal has value.
Yeah, absolutely.
You took it out of you took it out of the world. And you're going to utilize it as a resource.
Yeah.
And it's a renewable resource. Maybe all that's not going to click at age 9.
Sure.
But the fact that you're talking about it now, 10 years later, is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we took it back to the cabin, and I just remember, I mean, like I said, I don't think anyone had the anticipation that I was going to actually tag out. That was my second day hunting. I mean, we had spent one day at a different bait, and, that was even just, we're kind of just there to be there.
Yeah.
But, I remember there's a lot of pride associated with it, a lot of just, and not in a bad way, not in a vice way, just, I was really proud of the fact that I had actually done something that I had been looking at as almost, out of this world level of becoming a man, cool stuff that, my uncle and my grandfather did. And then being now a part of the club who had actually done something was a pretty big moment. And from there on out, I mean, whenever I had the opportunity, I was at the cabin. As soon as I got my driver's license, I was at the cabin all the time. And then we ended up selling it. And then still I, went hunting up in the mountains. And so I think a really unique thing about hunting that I haven't observed, I don't think I've observed it in any other sort of hobby or sport or anything like that, is it's almost a given. It is a given that it's not necessarily for you. It is for you to pass down. And I always like calling hunting the American pastime. I think that's such the American sport, it's a cool thing to think about it that way. It's something that is not only innately human, it is designed as something, we were taught to hunt by God. That was something given to us. You can read about that in Genesis, and God slain for us when we committed sin. It's an innate part of our nature. And it's cool to, A, experience that, but then B, give that to others to experience. And it's cool to sit here with, my grandfather, who that was passed down to him by his uncle. He passed it down to his son. You both passed it down to me, and I have the responsibility to pass it down when the time comes as well.
Well, one of the things that, culturally, if I could point out a big difference between the 60s, the early 70s, and now is I've noticed guys that hunt, everyone is almost specialized. Like a guy will become a mule deer hunter, and they go after. I met one down with you 2 years ago in southern Idaho, up on that rock quarry. Remember, I went over there to make a phone call.
Yeah.
And ran into this guy, and he's glassing this bull, and he'd been watching this buck for several weeks. He was hunting that one buck, and he was going to get him. But what I've noticed is people have become more specialized instead of being the all-around sportsman.
Sure.
Okay? So like my uncle, it was almost like the minute, well, down south, deer hunting is great, guys, because you start in October and you go to the end of December. You actually go 2 weeks into January, and you have multiple opportunities. But it's like the way I would describe it is the day hunting season was over, the hunting clothes got put into a tote, the guns got put into the gun cabinet, and you got your fishing rods out.
Yeah.
And you were fishing all the time. It was nothing to fish 2 to 3 nights a week. And then when fishing season was over, it was camping season. We're going to the mountains and we're camping. Do you see what I mean?
Absolutely.
And then it would culminate in a trip down to Florida to go deep sea fishing. So I've just noticed the younger guys now, they're more singular. They choose a sport and they go into it. Whereas the old school dudes were more all around.
Sure.
Like, well, you guys don't remember, but there was a show that was super, super famous in the 70s. It was on Saturdays at prime time. And it was called The American Sportsman. And it was deep sea fishing, moose hunting, elk hunting, bird hunting, squirrel hunting, rabbit hunting, spear fishing, all of these different things.
Sure.
So that's just one thing I've noticed between generations.
Yeah.
And differences in generations.
Hey, we're going to interrupt the pod real quick to let you know about one of our favorite partners, Montana Knife Company out of Frenchtown, Montana. I've been to their factory. I've been to their facility. I've met their team members, and they're awesome. Josh Smith was introduced to me a while back. This is a guy who's been a master bladesmith since he was little, but also he was a blue-collar lineman who eventually got the gumption to go all in on himself. Him and Brandon started Montana Knife Company. They're kicking butt. They've been on my radar for a while, and I've been partnered for over a year now with Montana Knife. If you're in the market for a knife that you can pass down generation to generation, something that's fixed and is going to stay sharp and you can break down your elk, check out the Stone Goat, the Mini Goat, the Blackfoot. They have a variety of knives. They have drops that sell out every time. So head over to their social or their website or their YouTube. Check them out. Follow along to be notified when their next drop is. We will even do more down the road, exclusive ELKSHAPE drops like we did this year. That thing sold out. Montana Knife, great company, great people, amazing knife that will last you a lifetime. Hey guys, we interrupt this pod to let you know about a little safety tip. We work with this company called My Medic. They make a first aid kit called the MyFac Mini. It is in my backcountry backpack, and I make sure that all my hunting partners have the same kit, and I make sure that we all know where we keep it in our backpacks. We know everything that's in it, including a tourniquet, and how to get to it quickly and how to use everything in it. We also have their larger med kits in our truck, our camper, everywhere where we're out and about, traveling, experiencing, having fun as a family. Safety first. Use the discount code ELKSHAPE. It'll save you 15%. Head over to My Medic and check out the MyFac Mini, especially you backcountry hunters. Hey guys, we interrupt this podcast to let you know we are brought to you by OnX Hunt. Out of Missoula, Montana, these guys are the original gangsters when it comes to digital mapping for your mobile phone or your desktop. If you're like me, you spend a ton of time e-scouting, OnX Hunt, especially elite members. You can take that map, turn it into 3D, and really get to know the lay of the land from the comfort of your own home. And when you're elk hunting like I am, I'm running tracking all day to know where I'm at, where I'm going, and where the elk are going to be. I'm never worried about getting lost. I know exactly where I am, and I'm never worried about trespassing because I know where I stand with OnX Hunt. If you want to save some loot and become an elite member and have access to all 50 states, enter the discount code ELKSHAPE at checkout. That'll save you 20%. Thank you, OnX. Back to the pod. So then I guess you and I got to hunt together an incredible amount. Like somehow you were able to get time off at your corporate job. I always made sure I had this entire month of September blocked off.
Correct.
Always. I just haven't missed a September. It's a feather in my cap. I made some sacrifices. I lost a job or two. But I was ate up. I was ate up with elk bugles. And probably because I wasn't having success, it didn't drive me to quit. It drove me the opposite. It drove me mad to where I would literally consume any and all literature, media about elk hunting to try to learn how to get it done. I didn't have a mentor for elk hunting. I didn't have an archery mentor. So it was a lot of just, school of hard knocks. Long story short is like, so I told you about New Mexico, I think 2005, your 50th birthday, when we had a hell of a year. I still don't know how you had this much time off, but I had been to Alaska solo DIY caribou hunt. Pretty crazy looking back, just getting dropped off in the middle of Alaska at age 21 and being like, I'm going caribou hunting solo. And I killed a caribou with my bow. Very proud of that. It was a 50-yard shot. I shot him with a mechanical. I thought I missed because I saw the arrow skipping past him after I shot. So I went up there to go see find my arrow, and there was blood everywhere. And I was like, oh, arrows go all the way through? Holy crap. Like, I didn't know that. This was early on in my bow hunting career. And then the following year, I'd made arrangements for him to come up, same place, same pilot, drop us off. He got a caribou. I got a caribou. It was incredible. The next year, we both drew New Mexico, which is crazy and not a great unit.
No,
not a great unit. It had wilderness, and we went and spy camped in there. And I told this story, and I'm gonna just keep it brief. I had a 14-day season. He had like a 9-day season. Mm-hmm. But we had planned to be there the entire month. I don't know how you got that much time off, but it took me 10 days to get my first archery elk with a bow.
Yeah,
you spotted it across the canyon in the evening. I didn't think I had enough time. You said, go for it. Glad you did. Glad I did. Went down. He hand signaled me in. I got on the same contour. He's giving me signals. You're at the right height. Move over. Stop. The bull feeds right into my lap 20 yards. Boom. I got a nice big bull.
Yeah.
We packed it out. We got it to town. We got it on ice. We came back. His season opens. Took us several days. And towards the end of the hunt, the light switch went off. And I told this story recently, but every nook and cranny had a bull. Every nook and cranny had a bull before that. They weren't bugling.
Yeah.
A cow squirted, and these bulls lost their mind. And I remember setting him up, cow calling, and I couldn't see the bull, but I watched him pull his bow back. I heard the sound, and I'll never forget, you didn't think you hit him good, but we went immediately down the trail, and there was an aspen, a big aspen on the right, and an aspen on the left, almost like a goalpost. Mm-hmm. And both sides was sprayed with blood. And that's when we were like, oh, we're getting this bull. And we went, and he did make it down to the bottom of the canyon.
Died in a creek.
And so we cut him up. I think we packed out a little bit, but we had to get our camp out too, because we had a spike camp. So the next day, we're set up to break down camp and go get the rest of the bull. And it had snowed all night long. And I just remember that picture of you holding up a 5 and a 0. It was your 50th birthday, and we're packing out your first bull with a bow. And that really catapulted our confidence, which there's something to be said about confidence. And a lot of guys argue about, man, you shouldn't use this broadhead or that broadhead on elk, fixed 2-blade. No, fixed 3-blade. No, fixed 4-blade. No, mechanical. And they get upset when you tell them what you've landed on. And I don't get upset. I say go to the woods with whatever gives you the most confidence, because it's confidence that kills. And that trip catapulted our confidence. We killed 2 bulls together.
Mm-hmm.
We're starting to put these pieces together.
Yeah.
And then that momentum led to, I would say, until 2019, there wasn't a year we didn't hunt together. There wasn't a year where he was either helping me pack out a bull or 2, or I called in a bull for him.
Right.
And then I sell the gym.
Mm-hmm.
I quit firefighting. I tell my wife, keep your job as a nurse. I'm going to try to do ELKSHAPE as a job.
Mm-hmm.
And God bless her. She was like, go for it. But that's kind of when I started not having the time to go hunt with you. And that's kind of when you backfilled and took my spot
Yeah.
as his little Sherpa. So what was it like hunting with my dad those first few years? Were you carrying a bow?
I wasn't carrying a bow until I'd say I was like 16 or so, and then I was carrying a bow for every hunt. And then before that, I had just done rifle hunts. He did the archery, and that was kind of our backup. And I didn't do elk rifle. And then at 16, I started carrying a bow, but still would kind of go with him because in the state of Idaho, you have to be with your mentor the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then obviously, you know, at 18 is when I was solo everything. But off the bat, it's always been good hunting with my grandfather for sure. It was funny, you know, in that brief period of overlap before he started to not hunt North Idaho as much, and we were all hunting North Idaho at the same time.
Out of the cabin.
Yeah. But it was always pretty fun for me because I remember I'd hear your truck start. I'd hear the coffee pot. I'd hear everything get going in the morning. You'd yell up one time. That was our only warning we got.
Mm-hmm.
It's time to go, guys.
No,
Rod,
he'd
get up.
put on that freaking AC/DC, crank it on 10, and walk out the door.
Well, it wasn't
Riley
AC/DC.
said it was Eminem, but
No,
I
it
think
could have been Eminem.
it's every day, so it's always a new song.
Yeah.
I know there was one song I played a lot. Is called. It goes like this: "Snap your fingers, snap your neck." And
Yeah.
it was heavy metal song,
Yeah.
and it was so rude. And I literally just we
Would
had
crank it.
the dopest sound system in that cabin.
Yeah.
But you two, both of you to this day, are not morning people.
Yeah.
Would you guys agree with that?
Oh,
I'd agree with that,
totally.
yeah.
Totally.
And you kind of have to be an elk hunter.
Sure.
And so I just wanted to make sure you guys didn't miss a
Well,
day.
that's why even to this day, I like spike hunting more than anything because you get another hour's sleep
or two.
and you eat your little mountain house and you're going up the mountain hunting. I love that.
Yep.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Well, I remember, and I told this story recently, but I'd like to hear it from your perspective too. But I remember it was September 11th. I remember it was 2017.
Yep.
I remember it was my first day ever on the mountain when the elk were bugling, ever. I'd never heard a bugle in my life. I'd honestly never seen an elk except for when Uncle Dan pulled the spotting scope out when he saw one across a canyon while we were shed hunting or bear hunting or something. And I remember the song that morning was Till I Collapse by Eminem. I do remember that.
Yep.
Okay.
I remember getting up. You had I think it was a 2002 Dodge Cummins or one of those older,
Yep.
big red. But remember getting in that, driving up the road, still trying to wake up, coffee in hand and all that. And I remember getting up to the mountain, getting off the four-wheeler, going to our little trail, getting off. And I swear as soon as that engine turned off, it was just like every direction I looked, there was a bugle. And
You
I
could hear them all around you.
yeah. And so I mean, you know what day I'm talking about.
Oh, it's
And
called a Bugle Fest.
Yeah.
Do you want to relive this?
Sure.
Okay. Well, tell us your perspective. Riley did share this story.
Yeah.
I know right what you're talking about.
Oh,
I
yeah.
will say, please don't say names of drainages.
I won't.
There are astute listeners.
Yes.
I won't.
High IQ.
But I know every dude that hunts in there, and I love them all. So we got off the four-wheeler, and I touched off one bugle, and we got multiple answers.
Yes.
Straight down. And we really got lucky because we started side hilling, and there was an elk trail.
Perfect.
And it just got better, and it got better, and it got better. And we're walking along the elk trail. He's right behind me. And all of a sudden, I look down the mountain, and these two trees are just being demolished. And I look at him, and he looks at me, it's bulls fighting.
Oh, yeah.
And they're crashing into those trees. And the horns were just...
I thought it was logging. I thought people were cutting trees down.
Yeah, so after watching elk for about 25 years, one thing bulls like to do, rarely do you see bulls just full on go at it, but a lot of times it's posturing, it's displaying, and they'll even come up to each other and there'll be a tree between them.
Yes.
And they'll both attack the tree at the same time, or one will switch back and forth.
That's what happened.
It's a lot of this display. Rarely is it a fight to the death. They will fight, but I'm just saying there's a lot of times where they like to get a tree between them and just both go back and forth. Poor tree.
So we were on a side hill trail headed towards the opening where your camera was stolen.
Mm-hmm.
And I told Riley, I said, I'm going to sit you down right here because I could see 40 yards ahead really easy.
Mm-hmm.
And I just walked up there and I told him to sit on the trail above where these bulls were fighting. And I went ahead and I started seeing a bull coming through the trees, right? So I run back to him and his eyes were like this big. And I go, what's going on? What? He goes, there was a bull, a monster. Where was he? Right there. Where's there? Like 5 yards below his feet, coming up to him. And immediately I thought, God, I almost got my grandson killed by a bull.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I was thinking. And he goes, I go, how big was it? He just goes, it was huge.
Yeah.
And then he followed me down the trail and I touched off a cow call and 5x5 came running, but he stopped at 43 yards. And I heard another one to my left coming. So I shot and I hit a limb. I mean, I watched it, went over his back, went down the trail towards your old camera that was way down that trail. And then I said, let's go find my arrow. And we went down there. And didn't another one come in?
Yeah, there was another one that came close to me a different time that I was just above it. It came below. You had a shot. You weren't going to take that shot because you were worried you might hit me. It was that close.
Yeah.
And then I know we got closer down to the bottom. Well, two things. I remember that was the first time I didn't even have the concept of taking a nap in the woods. I didn't think that was real. You know, I think that scared me at that age, sleeping, and I think I was worried about wolves coming to kill me or something. But I remember we took a nap, and then I remember we went down towards the bottom. There were still bulls bugling, and then towards the bottom, I remember we had sat down on this kind of an elk trail, but more of just like maybe a side trail for them. And these 3 cows walked really close to us and just below. And I remember that was a cool moment for me just to be sitting there and quietly, and, we weren't going to shoot or anything. And it was just cool to observe elk and watch them go by. And because I aside from that bull earlier that day, I really hadn't had time or even an opportunity to be close to elk or see them or realize how big they were compared to a little whitetail or something.
Yeah. So that area right there, every year it seems like one of the guys that hunts up there, somewhere around that day,
mm-hmm.
they're active and they kill one,
mm-hmm.
and they'll come and they'll check you out.
This is my theory. And again, I haven't been there in quite a few years, but to me, that little benched out area is a pecking order area where they sort it out. And if you can catch that day, and it's always early, first week or two in September, it's kind of like the herd gets established and everyone gets a chance or a crack, and you guys just timed it perfectly.
Yeah.
And I've had days like that where it's a pecking order day and I can let out any type of vocalization, you name it, it's going to work. They're going to come in. Yeah. You know what I mean? So to get that many encounters in a short amount of window, I mean, you got a shot.
Yep.
You almost got ran over by the herd bull.
Yep.
You had another bull come in,
Yep.
and they're all still ripping their heads off. You know,
Yep.
that's honestly when you got to execute. If you don't take advantage of those small little windows, you'll come to find out they're very, very few and far between. In fact, I've almost had these conversations with you where we would look back at an elk season and we'd be like, we really only had one Bugle Fest day.
Yes.
And it was around your birthday, almost
Yes.
year over year, which is the 22nd, which is makes sense. Fall equinox. And this year, 2025, fall equinox falls on the darkest day.
Really?
Yeah. You best
did
be
not
out in
know
the
that.
woods September 20. You best be killing an elk this year on your birthday. That's going to be probably a good day. Now, am I a big moon phase guy? Absolutely not. But I am a bigger moon phase guy when I'm hunting Southwest.
Yeah.
Like when I got my New Mexico tag or I've never hunted rut Arizona, but like I've hunted Nevada. Any high desert type stuff with not a lot of timber, I pay more attention to the moon phase. So if you guys are listening to this podcast trying to lean in on any tips, that was a big one. Now, do I pay attention to moon phase when I'm hunting more like Wyoming, Montana, Idaho? No, I don't give a shit about the moon at all. I don't think it has nearly an effect. And it probably does, and someone might disagree or agree with me. It doesn't matter. That's just my opinion. But for you guys, wherever you end up hunting this year, your birthday would be a good day to potentially have some good bugling.
Yeah.
So,
Well, back to that day. So I've gone up there and hunted that area by myself 3 years in a row until I joined you guys down there. And I can be honest with you, I heard bulls every day. I had multiple bugles. And somebody around me would kill a 6x6 or a 6x7 every year. And that trail camera that you put up, that you took down for me,
the one at the tree stand?
yeah,
Okay.
I had 500 and something pictures. I had multiple 6-point bulls.
Is that
Yeah.
tree stand still in there?
No,
There-
you got it out.
Yeah, I got it out.
What about the other one?
There is still
The other
one
one
up
is
there,
still
yeah.
there.
Yeah, that one of the guys, his dad was asking me if he could go take it down, and I was like, no, please don't.
Yeah.
Maybe we ought to go take it down, but I like that spot. I like tree stand hunting.
I do
elk.
too.
I do.
And I will tell you, I've been with you down in southern Idaho, and I've been with you in southern Idaho, and I absolutely love that. I love that because I can look and watch elk 2 miles away.
It's kind of nice to
And
see
as long as I'm seeing an elk, I'm in the game.
Yeah.
It's when you walk for, 4 miles and you don't see anything and you're just, the country's so big. But I still know I can go to the same spot every year and hear bulls.
Yeah.
Now, there's a big bull that lives in there.
Yeah.
And because we have a mutual friend that's been trying to specifically kill that bull.
I know many people who have been trying to kill that bull in that drainage.
There is a place in that drainage where I can tell you, unless you fly yourself in and parachute on top of them and shoot them right before you land on the ground, because I've gone into that drainage with every humanly conceivable plan
Yeah.
to kill that bull.
And what ends up spoiling it every time?
Swirling wind,
Exactly. And why do you think he lives there?
because it swirls. And I'll give you, this is the best story because the elk hunters will appreciate this. I had set the tree stands, which would be on a southwest corner of where he lives and the southeast corner of where he lives. And I would get there in the morning and I would hear him go behind me with like 80 cows and just work his
Time out. Not 80 cows.
whatever.
I got to help my dad. 10 to 15 cows.
Okay, whatever.
A little bit of a difference.
It looks like a lot more on my trail camera photos. But he would go up the drainage.
Yeah.
And he would bugle
The whole time? Pushing
Whole
them?
time.
Yep.
all the time. Then around noon, he'd kind of quiet down a little bit. So I came from the southwest. I came from the southeast. I came from the absolute north, the absolute south. I tried every move I could do. And then the last time I hunted there, I said, I'm going straight down through the thickest stuff. I'm going to do the Apache Indian crawl.
Like up the creek, the overgrown creek?
Down from the four-wheeler trail. Straight down in the valley.
With the machete?
No, I just did the sneak around the alders, step up over the alders. I made no noise. And I waited on the thermals. I started at 10:30.
Mm-hmm.
The wind is just coming into my face. It's a bright, sunny day. And I'm like, I'm going to kill this dude today.
Mm-hmm.
I got down 200 yards, and an elk barks at me. And he's not 80 yards from me. It's a bull.
Is he above or below you?
He's just above me to the left.
So he got your wind?
Up behind the camp.
Okay.
And he barks at me. I don't answer. I don't mess with him. He goes silent. I wait 30 minutes. I go another 150 yards down. And
what do you got for shooting lanes at this point?
nothing.
Gotcha.
Nothing.
I wasn't picturing any.
Occasional pocket.
Yeah.
But that herd bull is 200 yards below me, and he's bugling.
Okay.
And the satellites are bugling around.
Sweet.
So I get down to the toe of where that long ridge comes down, and a bull 150 yards above me barks at me. The wind is flying in my face, going up behind me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wind checking.
You're in a washing machine.
Yeah. So that big bull, and I know he's a good 6.
Mm-hmm.
He does the same thing. He barks once, twice, 3 times, and then leaves.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I keep going. Finally, the herd bull barks at me. I'm 150 yards away from him.
Middle of the day with thermals
Middle
going
of the
up.
day with the thermals blasting in my face. And I said, it's impossible.
Yeah. I've actually, for the record, I think I've only killed one bull in that area. I have spent very little time hunting in there. Very little. I do not like the wind there.
Mm-hmm.
And to do what you said, to add context, to come in from the southeast side, come in from the southwest side, to come in from the north, this isn't all off one road system. If you want to do one play, you got to drive 15 freaking miles all the way around, come in that way in the dark. To come in the other way, I mean, there's like 4 road systems you got to know, memorize, and learn intimately to come in from different directions, and they're all massive efforts. So it's not like you're just on a main road system trying to side hill from one way to the other. No, it's full sends. And it's definitely chess, not checkers. Every bull is killable. I just think down in that hole, I've never messed with them. I mean, you need a lot of luck. They got to be in the right spot on the right day. And I don't know, man.
So that bull, did I send you the picture of him under my tree stand?
Yeah, and I had a few
up?
other people text me pictures of him on the hoof.
Well, that bull's been part of the program for 4 years.
Yeah, he's pushing 380.
For your friend.
Mm-hmm.
Did you hear that?
Is he?
Pushing 380.
Yeah.
That's insane for an Idaho bull.
Idaho bull. But he's in decline now. He's going to die of old age in the bottom of that drainage.
For sure.
And I'm telling you, there'll be 30 guys in there.
Yeah.
During the course of elk season, trying all sorts of different stuff. I mean, I've watched him walk under my tree stand.
So what's your takeaway on something like that?
Guys will laugh when I say this. I love going there because I get to hear bugles.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep waiting for a bull to make a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Just to have that one day where they can make a mistake. But there's nowhere that I've elk hunted other than New Mexico where I can hear bulls every day in that one little stupid drainage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, it's just,
Yeah.
it keeps you going. And then I've had my friends, Mikey and his crew and Colton come in from the other side, come down from below by my bear bait. They've shot at bulls in there every year.
I got my bull there this year.
Yeah, you got a bull there. Mikey got a spike 2 years ago. Colton got a 4x4 out of there this year.
Tristan killed a nice one over 300.
Yeah.
A couple years ago, or his brother, somebody did.
His brother did
I'm not.
7x7.
Guys,
the older brother.
You're not making me miss this at all. I don't like hearing a bugle and imagining what he looks like.
Yes.
I want to hear a bugle, throw my glass up and be like, okay,
Yes.
I got you. I see what you are. I see what you is. I like seeing elk and
Yes.
hearing them. So
Yes.
I like to hunt a place where you can do both.
Yes. And I will say this. I got to elk hunt southern Idaho, sagebrush, sagebrush / timber pockets.
And the timber is wide open. Were you
Yes.
blown away at the timber?
Yes.
I was telling somebody on a pod recently that my first couple years hunting southern Idaho, I've been successful every year there. I've gotten an elk, but I've gotten busted a lot.
Yes.
And what it is busted by cows that can see 90 yards to the timber. I'm not used to that.
Yes.
And so I've had to really kind of learn that just because you're in the timber, it's still pretty wide open. And those elk are trained with their eyeballs as well as their nose and ears. So it's it's a different learning curve.
Yeah. Well, Riley and I have hunted that country and I kind of really enjoy that country now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the last time I went down there with you guys and I brought a couple of horses, that's the closest to the same emotions as the first year we owned the cabin, how exciting everything was, finding this trail. Oh, this trail goes over here.
Mm-hmm.
If we take our dirt bikes up here and we get over here, we can see down into here. You know, that excitement, you're learning something new.
Mm-hmm.
But the year that I took those two horses down and joined you guys down there, that was just fun.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it was just a lot of fun. I mean,
Imagine if you had brought good horses too. That would have been even more fun.
well, yeah, yeah, no kidding. But I enjoy that a lot. I enjoy that country. It's
definitely different.
but
I have debates all the time.
But we haven't talked about the dirty little secret. The reason I wanted to sell the cabin was because of the number of people that were showing up at my elk spots, where I could always kind of take my dirt bike and be by myself and find a good place to hunt. The last few years we owned the cabin, that got to be harder and harder and harder. There was just more and more hunters and more guys.
Was I out of the game by then?
You were out of the game,
Okay, 'cause I don't-
but you were showing videos of us hunting on dirt bikes and talking about our techniques. And I started seeing more dirt bike hunters.
It's just my fault.
Yeah, thanks, son.
Shame.
And here's a guy with an elk rack on the back, and I had a lot of confrontations with angry hunters, and
I'm not here for that.
I got really, really, really tired of that.
I feel like that has
You're not going to get away from that no matter
No.
where you go. Just
happened
FYI.
to me in southern Idaho.
I
Yeah.
mean, there's always a bad apple or two, but I've also met some great hunters.
Me too.
Seriously, last year I was tagged out with 4 days to twiddle my thumbs, so I helped Tyler. I was his caller, and I met a lot of hunters when I was his caller, and they're all great guys, just trying to do their thing.
Yeah,
Sometimes their plan went against our plan, but it's public land.
it's public land.
But I will say there is a degree of North Idaho where I've personally ran into some like extreme jerks
Yep.
that are territorial.
Yeah.
And even you just said it, my spots, they're not your spots. They're none of our spots.
No.
They're public land. Now there's etiquette. I guess maybe we could segue a little bit of etiquette. And in my earlier years, I had a reputation for, I wouldn't call it the best etiquette, but like I had this theory where like your success will not get in the way of my success. And I'm not meaning like I'm going to trample over you, but it meant like I spent more days in the gym, more days putting cameras out, more days cutting trails, more days shooting my bow. Like there's no way possible that you're as committed as me. So you go wherever you want. You want this ridge, you can have it. You want that finger? Great. You just tell me where you're going. I'll go the opposite way. I hope you have success. I know I'm going to have success. And that only comes from putting in the work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And the people have no clue, and I will testify to it. They have no clue the amount of work you put into an elk season and in preparation. And I would join in with you on some of that.
For sure.
But I never bought into the, I need to get multiple trail cameras. Oh, I need to find out what the elk are doing. Well, then you started going steep and deep and putting in these cameras. And I'll never forget the one you put in on the divide. And you brought these pictures home, and you had some video. Mm-hmm. And it was like 5 bulls with a thunderstorm going off behind them. Mm-hmm. Do you remember those?
Oh, for sure. I still have them.
And I look at that and I'd go, God, there's 5 giant bulls right there.
They summer together.
Yeah.
And they do it in pecking orders. The big ones hang out with the big ones. That's why I started shed hunting. And you find one big shed, you find nothing but big sheds. When you find little rag bulls, you find more rag bull sheds. I started learning elk behavior biology, and I think most people don't spend enough time outside of September learning about elk.
Yes.
And if they would or could, it's going to help you better understand the animal.
Yes.
And back to hunting pressure and other hunters and stuff like that. So what is the etiquette? The etiquette is first come, first served, in my opinion. And there's always room for put yourself in another guy's shoe. I'll give you an example of an encounter that I was not there for. I wish I was. But there's these guys who own a sporting goods store in a small town near the cabin.
Yeah.
And you and Brumwell were heading up this ridge, and these guys beat you to this ridge. And this ridge is expansive. I mean, miles, and it has multiple fingers off of it, and then it connects into another series of saddles and backside. Mm-hmm. These guys were under the impression that because their four-wheeler was parked there first, they get access to all of it.
Drainage.
And it's too much country for one set of 3. These guys were a team of 3 to hunt. And I only know your side of the story, to their defense. But they see you and Brian coming up the trail, and they have no grace, no patience, no like, which we're here first. Yeah. Turn around. You should have woke up earlier. And then your buddy,
old man, you need to get up earlier.
And your buddy spouts off, welcome to public land, which is not the nicest way to get a good little conversation going, some dialogue, and be like, hey, we understand you were here first. This is how it should have gone. But this is not how it went. We understand you got here first. This ridge goes 3-4 miles. You have fingers on both sides. Plus, it connects to this beautiful saddle and the backside. Certainly, you're not be able to hunt it all. Tell us your plan. We'll work around it. And we really, if you get one down and you see us, we'll help you pack it out. Yep. That's how that conversation should have gone. But it didn't. And here's what happened, is those guys figured out who you were. Yeah. Connected a dot to me. Yeah. Put me in the same basket as you. And you're not even one that spouted off, welcome to public land, And so for years, those guys kind of told people in the area that we were jerks. And I'm telling you, dude, that's not good. It's a small, elk hunting community is a very small community.
Yep. Well, there's more to that story, though.
I'm sure.
And I wanna add the really relevant part.
Definitely.
You and I were in that drainage the previous day.
Okay.
You and me. Mm-hmm. And we were off that one trail. Mm-hmm. And we had a bull going. And I set up in the alder patch, and I got that bull talking, and I kept him talking, and you put the Rocky Mountain sneak on him. Mm-hmm. And you got to 90 yards before he stood up, I think, and walked off. But even after he walked off and after we hiked out, he was still in the same spot bugling when we left. So I was going up there the next morning with Brian to come down on top and get the thermals and come down on that bull and try to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
When I got there, those guys were going down the trail right to where he was.
Yeah.
So I said to the kid that got so angry, I said, look, I was working that bull last night with my son. I know right where you going. You guys were above us. We had you bugling too. You're going down there to try to kill that bull. I'm not even going down there. I'm side hilling. I'm going up to the head of the drainage, 2.5 miles. We won't bother you at all. And he still got angry.
I will tell this part of the story because I was involved.
Right.
They just didn't know it. I also was hunting this drainage, and I came in from the bottom, and I had a trail that I had cut out all summer long.
Yep.
Why do I cut the trail out? Because it takes all the brush out, and I can haul ass up the drainage without that trail being cleared. It's significantly slower because it's a wall of brush. So I didn't know this was all going on, and I'm in the bottom. I got the wind. I'm under the bull. They had their confrontation, and this group of hunters start coming down towards them. Well, they had to stop because the thermals are going down, and they're good hunters. They know that they got to stop and wait for the thermals to change. So I worked that bull. I didn't get him killed, but I did eventually have him bump off, unbeknownst to the hunters above. So they start bugling when the thermals change. And so my wind's blowing straight up to them, but they don't know I'm there. And I didn't know that you guys had a big old chest thumping public land rodeo. And I'm glad I did this. Well, I proceeded to bugle, rake, and I pulled them some bitches all the way down to the bottom of this giant drainage.
Steep, nasty,
and when I got
ugly.
I mean, I got them down to where I could see them sneaking in with their, I saw them. They didn't see me, and then I just snuck out the back door. So I sucked them all the way down and left. Probably a jerk thing to do, looking back, but
That's the next morning is when I went in from the top side.
Yeah.
And ran into those dudes.
Honestly, man, and I haven't been in that drainage since. It was a good area, but I did get overran in there. And that's just kind of elk hunting. I think you got to be able to pivot when it comes to elk hunting.
Well, that's the number one thing that differentiates you from me is I'm like, how do I say this? I tend to be methodical. If I killed a bull there once upon a time, there's going to be another bull there. I need to go there because I know there's going to be a bull there. And what I learned from you after you started going and doing your own hunts where you wanted to, and I would go hunt a different area, you would just move.
Cover.
You would just go, well, where did you go today? Well, I went over there and I bugled down in there. Then I jumped on my dirt bike and I went over there and I bugled down in there. And then I drove all the way around. I went up this trail, 6 miles, got off my bike, bugled down into there. There's bulls down into there. You just started being the king of mobility. Like, I'm going until I find an area where I can kill a bull. And that became the method of operation for about 3 years in a row there, where you were just very mobile and you were killing bulls, 15 miles apart from where you killed a bull the previous year or whatever. And I think you've talked about that in your podcast and stuff.
For that terrain, some guys that tactic might not work, but like if I could get one bull to answer me in one drainage and just one bull, I probably wouldn't go after him. But if I'd put him on ice, drop a pin or whatever, if I could bebop over a couple more drainages and then I call into one and that's a herd bull and he's got 3 satellites, for that country and terrain, would immediately dive into there. Because the chances of them keeping each other vocal would allow me to sneak in thick brush. Now, flip the script. Same scenarios, but open country, I'm going after that solo bull. Because I'm going to be able to see him. I have less animals to worry about, and I can sneak in and shoot. But I needed, in that thick Idaho country, North Idaho, I needed multiple bulls bugling to kind of keep them talking so I could drop in closer. Because I stopped calling eventually, And I would notice the less I called, the bigger the bull I would kill. And the more I'd call, the smaller a bull I'd kill.
Yeah.
And I'm not a trophy hunter, but I'm like anybody. I'd like killing big bulls too. So I think mobility is huge. And I'd really like to talk about and end the pod with kind of daydreaming about 2025. Because that's, as a 43-year-old, that's what keeps me motivated all year and disciplined and driven is the goal, the prize at the end of the rope, which is September bugles and having a healthy knee and having a whole bunch of work done, like the hay in the barn, the bow tuned, thousands of arrows downrange, all the fitness, all the disciplined decisions on nutrition, all the e-scouting, all the scouting trips. So I'd like to connect with you this year. I'm an Idaho resident. I don't have to play the game. I'm going to go to a gas station and buy whatever tag I want that's OTC. I have a one area that I have yet to hunt that I really want to, but it is definitely wilderness. And I don't want to hunt wilderness without horses. Here's what I mean. I don't mind backpacking in. I don't mind hunting off my back. It's just when I get one killed, I don't want to lose meat, and I don't want to deplete my energy stores getting that elk out, because I guarantee I'll have another hunt right around the corner. And so there's one area in particular. I can't say the name. I want to, so you know what I'm talking about, but maybe you do.
I do. I know exactly where you're talking
about. And
I
don't want to go in there blind. And so I really want us to set aside a time to go down there and ride in with horses. And I don't want to have a time crunch. You're retired. I'm self-employed. You
are employed by you.
Okay.
And my Wrangler's off in the summer.
Okay.
She's off.
Can we please go down there? I just want to see the country. I want to look at where are the dudes accessing who don't have horses. That's most of them. Where are the dudes accessing that do have horses? That's some of them. Where are the timber pockets? I want to ride in the timber pockets. Where are the springs? Where are the wallows? How long does it take a guy to get in from the bottom? How many guys are coming in from the backside over the top? Where are the potential escape routes for when the pressure will come? I don't want to learn this in season. Okay? So we should talk about that. And then, are you going to be able to get over your arthritis to shoot a bow? Or do you want to look at a crossbow with a doctor's note? Or do you want to learn how to use a handheld or a tension activated where you don't need to use your index finger?
Yeah, I'll adapt to something, you know. So when it comes to hunting down there, here's what I learned when we took the horses. Riley and I had a horse camp down there, and you were off hunting somewhere else, some state. You're always in some state. All I know is Dan's showing up on the something. He's been in New Mexico or whatever. And you pull into camp, and then generally Tyler came down, and who else? Crawford.
It was Josh Crawford.
Oh, and Jake was down there.
Jake Webb.
Yeah. And then for the scouting trip, he brought his girlfriend.
Now wife.
But he brought his girlfriend
to
scouting camp.
That sounds about right.
And it was like riding on the Love Boat. You know, they were in that stage, the infatuation stage.
I think they might still be.
Yeah. And they were goo-gooing and gaga-ing, and we just want to walk through the forest hand in hand, you know. Find a soft mossy spot where we can cuddle.
Yeah.
But here's what I really liked about that. Now, my wife and I went down there, and we took 2 horses, and we rode up towards the top.
Did some scouting in the summer.
Yeah, and then circled around and got back on the creek trail, came back in that way. And I had just bought a new horse out of Wyoming, and Andrea rode him that day. And I watched him on the trail, and he was athletic. Problem is, we didn't try any packing on him. We had just been told. We bought him out of Wyoming, dude. They said we use him as pack horse all the time.
Yep.
But what I really liked about that was the day we were able to put everybody's stuff on a horse You guys were able to dirt bike in without 90 pounds of gear on your back. We walked, 4 or 5 miles?
Yeah, it didn't take very long.
Yeah, good trail.
Mm-hmm.
We walked 2 horses in, loaded with gear, and we were able to set up a camp and hunt out of there.
And got the high line and everything, and the horses had feed and water.
I thought that worked
A great
beautifully.
spot.
We had the pellets for them in the morning.
Yeah, we had a couple hiccups with bucking
Couple
horses.
hiccups, but honestly, it wasn't bad.
No.
It was a pretty comfortable camp because of the horses.
Yep.
And the only thing that kind of sucked, I guess, would be like you had to get up early to get them fed,
Yeah.
walk them around,
Yeah.
and then you kind of had to do that at dark. It wasn't about you. Like, you know, when you get back from a hard day at elk hunting at spike camp, you just want to eat, get the fire going, tell a few lies,
I
go
want
to bed.
to eat, take a shot of whiskey, get the fire going, and go to sleep.
Yeah.
I don't.
You don't get to do. It's not about you. You got to take care, manage the horses and whatnot.
But then we got back to camp, and you had to leave and go to school.
Mm-hmm.
And I was down there by myself, and I get a text from Crawford, "Hey, I got a bull down. Bring the horses." That worked about as sweet as you can possibly.
And that's why I'm still tolerable.
I jumped on.
You guys packed it out in one trip with horses.
Oh, I jumped on my horse. I rode it all the way to the elk. Crawford was giddy. He threw 4 quarters on one horse, walked down that horrible hill, back up the other side to his truck, unloaded 4 quarters, and then I rode the horses back to camp. That was
Yeah.
was
That's why
top
I
shelf.
think we need to have your horses available. So I guess I'm going to pinch on you on the camera right now. You haven't killed an elk in a few years.
Correct.
Couldn't even hunt last year because of the kidney removal.
Yeah.
I know you. You love elk meat more than anything, and then followed up by you love bugle juice.
I do.
It takes 20 years off your bones when you hear a bull ripping. So is it that important to you to hunt the rut? Because you could switch to rifle and get an elk every year. But are
Oh,
you,
no
and you're
doubt.
68, are you still hell-bent on bow hunting elk?
Well, I kind of, the last time I was down there with you guys, I put a lot of miles on my feet.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you hear that first bugle, all the pain goes away.
Amen.
You just, let's walk 2 miles and kill a bull. I don't care.
Yep.
No, I think I've got a couple years left to hunt with a compound bow.
Okay.
I really do. The arthritis is, it's not that big a deal.
Well, that excites me because I wanted to tell you that
Well, even if I can't hunt every day, I just want to be in the middle of it. I like being there, having the horses. I like, even if I just hunt out of camp 3 or 4 miles on horseback, I don't care. I just like being there. It's the best vacation in the world.
Well, we have we got Denham, Tyler Denham, who he might hunt with us, he might not. You know, he's a wild card. We got Crawford, who's all in.
Oh, yeah.
He's even rearranged his schedule. You know how he's always kind of only got like a 2-week window,
Yeah.
and he'll leave even if the bugling's good. He'll leave because he's a good man, and he told his wife he'd be at a certain time.
Yeah.
He doesn't even ask for an extension. He went ahead and had those negotiations after season, so he's cleared to hunt longer. He didn't get an elk last year, and he's hungry, and he's fun to hunt with. He gets after it. You got Riley, who I told him right now he's going to have to film a little bit, but once he gets his shot list done and his chores, I'll self-film the rest. So he's going to be freed up. You're going to be freed up.
I wish you would take him with you because
It's certainly possible.
I mean, no offense to your other cameramen, they just can't keep up with you, dude. And they're not getting the shots of the shot. And
Well, it's tough. It's a tough deal. It's almost a lose-lose deal. Like it's a tough deal. I've loved everyone who's ever helped me film. Like
I love the guys,
I do too.
but it's like,
But how many elk have I
Accident.
killed once the cameraman pulls out?
how
It's
many
almost-
cameramen have you lost to injury on the way to go elk hunting?
It's tough. So anyways, you could definitely try to film me. It's worth a shot.
Yeah.
But I wanted to bring up for you, I signed a contract with this company called Latitude Outdoors out of Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
They saw that I was really getting into tree stand elk, and then I went saddle hunting for deer this year, and they were like, dude, we want more Western guys to use our saddle system. And I was like, that's it, let's do it. Where we've hunted, and I mean, everything we've talked about is not where I want to go this year. So do you kind of know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Where your boy, yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
There are places in there where you can ride your horse, highline them, tie them up wherever, side hill with a trekking pole, go up a tree with this Latitude system, get in a saddle system, which is extremely comfortable, and hunt productive water sources at productive times and not kill yourself and utilize your horse as your stock to get the elk out and back down. And you can let us dipshits go run up and down them mountains all day. If you did it the way I'm talking about, you will kill your elk before any of us do. I am convinced that I'm going to shoot an elk, Lord willing, between August 30th and September 5th over a high country water source
That's
out of
cool.
my saddle.
I've seen the video. It's
I'm sold.
impressive.
Yeah.
Now, am I going to be sitting in a saddle September 15th when the elk are bugling?
No, you can't.
No,
You can't
I
take
cannot
it.
do that.
You can't take it.
But I do think there's a lot of downtimes on an elk hunt where instead of taking that nap, go find somewhere productive where elk do move through a specific saddle or a specific water source and become intimately familiar with the Latitude system. It is so light, and with you, weight doesn't matter. For me, hiking in that tree stand last year was so much work because I had to hike in this giant ladder. Then I had to go back and get the tree stand,
Yeah.
go back up, set it all up, cut out shooting lanes, and then hope that it's there on opening day. It was, hunt out of it, then take it down 2 trips. It's just a lot of work. And then, man, I don't have to do that anymore. So I think for someone your age, you should strongly consider investing in the Latitude system.
I would consider
And-
that. Are they safe?
Extremely safe. I feel safer in that because how many times have I sat a tree stand and let's just shoot the truth without any safety device on?
1,000?
90% of the time.
1,000 times?
Now I always am going up with my lineman belt around the tree. Okay. And then when I get into the tether, it's like a built-in safety harness. And you now can shoot literally 360 degrees.
Well, that's a game changer.
And I can go up just about any tree. And I have climbing sticks with aiders, which gives you more room. So I don't need that many climbing sticks. And it's like anything. Perfect practice makes perfect. If you haven't shot your bow out of while being in a saddle, and do you expect to arise to some level of preparation that you never prepared for? No, you fall back to your highest level of preparation. So Tyler and I are already like, once this knee's fixed, we're going to literally practice our saddle stuff. Just because I think that's just another way. And I think for your age, this opens up the door for more years of hunting, especially because you have horses. What's your feed bill? How much money do you have invested in horses, horse trailers, arenas, vet bills? Like
Shoes.
Oh, like horses are expensive, right?
Every 6 weeks, new shoes.
And how many horses do you have now?
5. But I just sold one.
That's good. I just think, Dad, for you at 68, it would really drive you to be healthy and kick around a little longer and get that camaraderie. Yeah, take a day off.
Well,
Here or there.
I think I like that saddle system idea. I also like setting up a blind and hunting out of a blind.
Absolutely.
That's fun.
I think ambush is your game at your age.
Yeah, it's
And
more
patience
fun.
kills.
Yeah, it does. But the last time we were down there,
Yeah.
and we're hunting together, we saw a lot of elk.
Yeah.
We did.
We did.
There's no brush blocking your view.
Well, yeah.
No.
I mean, we saw elk, period.
Yeah.
The only elk I saw it was a short season because I ended up tagging out earlier, was the elk I shot. And I heard elk every single day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, to wrap up the pod and whatnot, we do have a gift for you. We got a really cool tour yesterday. of the Stop Box USA factory.
I got you this.
Wow.
So we got you one of those stop boxes. I know you were.
I would
wanting
like
one
you
of
to
those.
open it, but I don't think. Do you have a knife?
I don't.
Do you have a knife?
Yeah, I just worry about the grandkids around my house.
Yeah.
That's what this is for. So basically, I had a wake up call last week. And this is kind of a God story, really. But Alicia took Avery to her piano lesson, which is 5 minutes from the house. And so she said, hey, Tristan, you can stay at home. He's 8. Probably not the best decision, but she's like, hey, you can stay at home for 5 minutes. I'll be right back. What's the worst thing that could happen, right?
Yep.
She comes home, and Tristan's invited 2 friends over to the house that we've never met before, and they're inside our house. I keep a loaded handgun in my night dresser.
Yep.
And I've had talks with my kids at great lengths to stay out of there, but they're still kids. And when I heard that, my wife didn't say anything about a gun or anything, but I reverted back to okay, dude, you need to figure out something. And I had seen this ad on Instagram about this box lock thing that you can get through. It doesn't have batteries. And so I looked them up, and they're out of Spokane. I couldn't believe it. I literally called them up and said, hey, can we come over and buy one? And I'd like to shoot a little video. Here's my, here's what I do. Their marketing team reached right back out and was like, come in on Monday at 2. And they gave us a full tour. We're going to put the video on the ELKSHAPE Gear channel.
Really cool tour.
Unbelievable tour. Total self-made. Awesome company. They're putting out 2,000 units a day. And so the guy, I told him I wanted to give you one. And so he gave me one to give you. So
Fantastic.
this is pretty cool. You have the Stop Box Pro. This is the bigger one. You can change this code to whatever you want. Okay.
That's fantastic.
Do you see how this has a little bit of opening?
Yeah.
And then you can push down. You
Yeah.
have to push it down. And it comes standard with your thumb, index, and ring finger. Push, and it will open up. And then you have these little doodads and all these little attachments to change the code to whatever you want so that you can open this up in the
That
dark.
is amazing.
Yeah. Room for a large firearm and an extra magazine.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, I would need that size because I have a 45.
Yeah.
So you should have your stuff locked up.
Yeah.
And you can now do that. And these aren't that expensive, man. But this one is on the house. So there you go, sir.
Well, thank you very much. That is fantastic. I'm impressed. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's out of Spokane.
Yeah.
Pretty cool company.
And
We'll probably-
totally American made. I had
American
some
labor.
doubts getting in there, and there's a beautiful American flag draped over these 3 assembly lines it's a clean, I worked in a CNC shop at one point.
Mm-hmm.
It's a clean operation. It smells nice when you go in there. It's
Yeah.
not like, all these oil bulbs everywhere. It's just a beautiful operation and totally USA based.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
And we're not sponsored by them.
No, we're
Just
not. We're just
Happened to figure out they're nine minutes away.
from here.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
Well, I think I appreciate that. I really do. And that's a super safe item to have around your house. I don't have little kids, messing.
Mm-hmm.
You know how when you're a little kid in your home, you always go mess around with your parent in your parents' room.
Oh, yeah.
You do. You go through your parents' drawers, you look for hidden stuff, and you learn to where the Christmas presents are hidden under the bed, so you're always screwing around.
Kids snoop around.
They snoop around. I don't care what anyone says. This is a super
I ended up getting
idea.
Alicia one as well for her handgun. So now hers is on her nightstand, mine's on mine, and we both we know each other's code, and we can get in. Takes a little practice, but not much.
Well, the thing that I have to end this podcast with is bad news for you.
Okay.
It's not good news.
Okay.
So how old is Tristan now?
8.
8. So you've got about 3 years of hunting left to where you can go wherever you want, whenever you want,
I hope you're right.
whatever time of the day you want, because you're going to have to carve out time 3 years from now to go out and sit in a blind.
I hope you're right, man. I don't know if he will, but I'll tell you this.
Well, he'll decide.
There's
that.
a lot of youth seasons in October.
Yeah.
A ton. And I will start buying him his point in Arizona. I'll start getting him a profile in Wyoming, Washington, Idaho. I'll do all that if he shows interest. My fear is to make him hate what I love.
Then
So I'm just delicate.
Don't push him
Exactly.
at all. Just take him along every now and then, and they'll decide if they like it or not. But if he does like it,
good.
If he does like it, you're going to learn what it's like to worry about your child while you're trying to hunt.
Well, I think that's a good segue into closing this out with the importance of passing it on, because this conversation wouldn't happen if Uncle Dink didn't take you out and he didn't have to.
No, he didn't.
This conversation wouldn't happen if your dad didn't take you out and he did not have to.
True.
This conversation would not happen if you guys didn't take me out and you definitely did not have to. And so I think it's important, and it's easy to lose the sight of this as, it's not for everyone. There's no doubt about that. But it is our responsibility and our job as American sportsmen to pass that on and keep this tradition going. And I think that's something we shouldn't lose sight of.
Cheers to that.
Mm-hmm.
So do you know what our saying is?
Mm-mm.
Separation's in the preparation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I usually get prepared about 2 weeks before the season.
Yeah.
Separation is in the preparation that my dad does 2 weeks before opening day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Now, my wife is even worse. She shoots her bow once a year, and that's the day before the opener of deer season. And guess what she does? She jumps back to 20 yards, shoots a tight group, jumps back to 30, shoots a tight group with her 7-year-old arrows and says, "I'm ready."
Yeah.
So
That's
she's
awesome.
killed quite a few.
Well, thanks for coming on, Dad.
Yeah,
Guys, this was
enjoyed
my
it.
dad. He's my hero, and I hope you enjoyed our conversation. Separation is in the preparation, and we will catch you on the next one.